The Miami Hurricanes are just loading up at tight end. We just got another one from the 260 to the 305. Brock Schott. Welcome to the
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
As if the spring game didn't keep us busy enough, I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and also host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Miami lands a big verbal commit. We're going to break it down here with our recruiting overlord. And every time Brian Smith joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. He is with us now, our recruiting overlord, Brian Smith. Now, Brian, Brock Schott is from your original neck of the woods up there in Leo, Indiana. I'm sure at certain times Notre Dame's had some traction, but Ohio State was the big one that was really, really gunning for Schott. And so Miami gets, for the second time in a week, they take Luka Gilbert from Ohio State. They're taking Brock Schott from Ohio State as well.
It is bizarre because they don't lose a lot of battles in their own backyard. They really don't. This kid lives basically in Fort Wayne, which is 15 minutes or so from the Ohio border. So, you can kind of put that in perspective. Anyway, to make a long story short, flex tight end, he's the opposite of Luka. He has the ability to stretch the field, catches the ball like a receiver, runs routes like a receiver. He played running back and caught passes, H-back, inline tight end, slot, out wide. Leo High School used him every possible way known to man. And it just showed his versatility. I think it's pretty easy to say he's a top 5 national slot/flex tight end. He just needs to add a little more weight. He's 215, 220. He'll be 240 before he leaves Miami and be a good player. And again, the combination between him and Luka is a really good one. You're smart to bring that up. Alex, Miami's going to run 12 personnel, especially down in that red zone, play action off of it. They're still going to run zone and power, but they're going to use 2 tight ends. That's why they need guys like this.
Yeah, and you were spot on with Schott's listing. 24/7 Sports has him listed at 6'3", 215 pounds. I know that he still has to play his senior season of high school coming up, and then once he gets into the Miami strength and conditioning program, like I've had a chance to talk with a lot of the early enrollee freshmen, Brian, and a lot of them, like Derek Plaz, for example. I know he plays a position where weight is at a premium, but he's already put on 20 pounds since he got to Miami 3 months ago. So I'm sure they would put some weight on Schott as well. But okay, let's talk a little bit more about Schott's strengths, Brian, because I know that something that stands out not only on film but from his scouting reports is, I think the 24/7 scouting report says he runs probably better than any other tight end in the class. So as you alluded to, this is a guy who can stretch the field. Talk a little bit more about what stands out about Schott.
I'm not saying he is the following player, but the way he runs, like how fluid he is like a Jeremy Shockey kind of thing. Like Jeremy, from a flexibility standpoint, like his stride was wild. Like he was about as athletic as it gets. This kid, the way he was running, I remember saying to myself, you could, like at Kansas State, and I'm not picking on them, they don't get a ton of great receivers. He could be their boundary for a year or two, at least until he grew into tight end. He is that good, and he catches the ball away from his body, in traffic, etc. So down the field plays, right off the bat, that's something that, let's be honest, what was it last year, Alex? 18 receptions for the tight ends or something?
18, one
it's
touchdown.
Just terrible. Miami, it's one of the best tight end schools ever, so why would you not have more? But the way they're recruiting with Riley coming up, etc., Luka, this young man, Brock Schott, a lot of athletes, you're going to see more vertical, and I think it'll be really quick. Anybody that doesn't work hard, this kid will pass because he's going to be a threat right away, especially when they flex him out. He can get down the field, man. Tight ends don't normally do that. That makes it different for him.
It's crazy how, like, we go from during last season, you mentioned only 18 catches for the entire tight end room. The narrative at that time, and this isn't necessarily the narrative of recruits, but it was kind of the narrative of college football fans who follow recruiting was, why would any tight end want to go to Miami right now? Like they're not getting
I get it.
utilized. They're only being asked to block. And then that goes obviously to December and beyond. Then we fast forward to March and April, and every day Elijah Lofton is out there dominating all over the field in practice. And I've seen really good stuff from Elijah Arroyo and Riley Williams and so on. And Jackson Carver, I was watching him the other day making some catches. So it's amazing how quickly those narratives seem to change, Brian, where all of a sudden Miami locks up verbal commits. I always have to say that because people will come after me. Miami locks up verbal commits from two of the best tight ends in the class within a week.
I mean, again, they beat Ohio State for these kids. I was just watching the Ohio State spring game. They have players. It's easy to sell that program. And you took them out of Cincinnati and Fort Wayne, right in their backyard. So that's important. And I'm trying to think, is there a position the Canes have recruited and or assimilated talent and increased the roster better than tight end since Mario has been there? Like, I mean, you'd have to at least strongly consider it. I mean, quarterback right now is really good too.
Yeah.
Tight end is in the like a year ago to have this conversation.
Offensive line, and defensive line.
Yeah, they've recruited across in the trenches, and Mario said he was going to do that. And to his credit, they've lived up to it. Now they got to go out and produce this year, but got to get the bodies first. This is the final piece, and I think we'll start to see that more and more this year. But in 25, Miami's tight end room will be loaded, and that's the way it should be. They'll have 4 or 5 guys that can play, who's healthy and can do different things. Like you mentioned, Lofton, he can play fullback in the goal line situation, run a little play action, get him out in the flat. He'll make a guy miss. How many tight ends are like that? Brock Schott, same kind of thing. Miami's going to have more dynamic, big-bodied guys, and they might even use a kid like this. We've talked about this recently. Miami doesn't have a lot of bodies for the big-bodied boundary receiver spot. You can play him out there. 5 yards away from the goal line, you can almost tell a team what they're doing. You can't put a linebacker out there. He's going to get smoked, so you're going to have a corner out there. This is the kind of guy that can make that play. Miami's going to have a lot more options for their offense.
So when we come back here with Brian Smith, I want to talk about where Miami now stands in the recruiting rankings for the class of 2025. And I've got a bonus question for Brian about a Florida State committed interior offensive lineman who's on a visit to Miami right now, Friday into Saturday. So, folks, you know what you want to do? You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this special episode. Brock Schott, welcome to the U. We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. And I'm not done with LinkedIn Jobs. And if you're a small business owner, you should only be getting started here. When you're hiring, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We have the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith, with us. So, Brian, is there any concern on the Florida State side on Solomon Thomas? One of the 5-star interior offensive linemen. He is in Miami now on a 2-day visit, Friday into Saturday. I can't exactly speak to how close Miami may be on pulling off a flip, but I know this is a player they're recruiting incredibly hard. What do you think ends up happening with Thomas?
I think he's going to take LSU, Florida State, and Miami official visits, and this will be one that really drags out towards signing day. Like his recruitment, all four of those schools are after him really, really hard. And they're not the only ones. They're just the current front runners. And he was open to me when I met him at Under Armour in Orlando that he wants to get to know everybody and see what the program's like, how it works. So this is a great opportunity to see what Alex is like when he's actually coaching offensive linemen. Miraball's a great O-line coach, but it's different talking to him instead of just standing 5 feet away and watching him do it. There's no replacement for that. So Solomon's a good kid. He's very intuitive. He'll make his decision based on these visits, and that's the way it should be.
So let's take a look at adding Brock Schott to the class of 2025. And folks, keep in mind, this stuff is fluid. If there are other verbal commits to other parts of the country tonight and tomorrow, by the time you watch this or hear this, these rankings might have changed for better or for worse. But at this very moment, adding 4-star tight end Brock Schott jumps Miami from what was the 20th ranked class of 2025 up to the 13th ranked class of 2025. Hurricanes now have 7 verbal commits, including 4-star running back Gerard Pringle, 4-star tight end Luka Gilbert, 4-star receiver Waden Charles, 4-star linebacker Elijah Melendez, 4-star quarterback Luke Nickel, 3-star offensive tackle Lamar Williams. You throw Brock Schott now into that mix. Now, Brian, again, it's way too early to really dissect the recruiting rankings because at this moment, Miami actually just did pass North Carolina and SMU, who had been sitting in front of Miami in the rankings. They are still behind Clemson and Syracuse within the ACC. They are ahead of Florida and Florida State, but a long way to go. But Miami seems to be pretty far ahead of where they were this time last year, Brian, because this time last year, Miami had just added their 3rd verbal commit in Chance Robinson. They're up to 7 right now.
I think Miami's ability to recruit kids for the long haul, understanding how this works, is smart. The best players generally don't commit early and just stick with it. Miami flipped kids. They went after the best players like in Chicago, kids out west, Texas, all over the country. And that's just the way you got to do it. Sometimes it takes longer when you do that, but you get rewarded on National Signing Day. This is the absolute correct approach. And Miami did their due diligence last year with all these underclassmen they scouted, and that's also paying off. If you're going to win national championships or even coming close to getting there, this is how you do it with the evaluations and the recruiting process, and they'll end up with the top 10 class. Miami doesn't end up top 10, I'll be shocked. I think they've still got a chance at a top 5, depending on how some things fall, but they're in on so many elite kids. It's hard to say. Like there are more kids that they're looking at right now from out of state that they got a shot at than I would have guessed at this point. Just as an example, they've got a kid by the name of Haynes, a corner out of Oklahoma that's going to take an official visit soon. He might be the best overall corner in the country, but he might even be better at receiver. And he's going to visit into May. They don't know how that's going to go. He's from Oklahoma. So There's a long way to go, but this is going to be a really good class.
Great stuff as always from Brian Smith. You want to follow him on Twitter or on X? Sorry, I'm still saying Twitter. That's so 2023. He's at FB Scout _Florida. We are at Locked On Canes. If you follow us, we will follow you back. And we'll talk to you guys next time, either late tonight or I go to bed early, folks. So it might be early tomorrow. We are going to have a full review and breakdown of Miami's spring game. So we'll talk to you then on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.